All right, so we're going to pick up where we left off last week with our SWAG process, which is our school-wide annotation process. We talked about the S in SWAG last time. We scanned the titles, the pictures, and the captions. You'll notice that each of these steps builds on the next step. So when we were scanning, we probably were looking at the vocabulary in either the captions or in the titles and subtitles, because those kind of words are going to be repeated, or they'll be a repeated idea. For example, when I talk about repeated or connected ideas, if I were reading an article about education and it mentioned a classroom, but then later in the same paragraph it mentioned a learning environment, are those the same repeated words? No. Are they connected words? Yes, because a learning environment is also a classroom. So as we're looking at words specifically today, we're looking at them so that we can then start to identify main idea. That's what the A stands for. It means to analyze for main idea. And then we'll take our main ideas to build our gist, our summary of what we just read. Okay? So when we're looking for words, I want you to be on the lookout for repeated or connected words that are repeated, that are unique. When I say unique words, what I'm really talking about are special sounding words, different sounding words, or words that just keep coming up a lot. So like words like a, and, or the, that's not what I'm asking about. But a word like learning environment or classroom or study area, we know that those are all connected words that might mean the same thing. And if an author keeps repeating them, why do they keep repeating them? Tina? They're trying to prove a point. They're showing that they are important. In fact, they're probably part of the main idea. Okay? So, can I get a volunteer to read paragraph 1? All right, so paragraph 1, the whole purpose of it is an introduction. So go ahead and write that on your paper. And in the intro, we're always going to get a preview of the main ideas. And at the end, when we're talking about our summary, I'll point out exactly where they show them, because they preview the main ideas. They even preview them in order. We'll use this article throughout the year. I'll refer back to it over and over again because it's really well written in a way that makes it easy to see the parts of informational writing pretty easily. Now, in that introduction, you're going to see some of the words that we're going to see later, so be on the lookout. This next part, I'm going to have someone read paragraph 2, and then I'm going to model some thinking out loud. Once we get there, I'm going to ask you to just pay attention to what strategies I'm using so that then you can use them in paragraphs 3 and 4. All right, so here's what I want you to think about. When we're looking for words, I said we're going to look for repeated words or repeated connected words. So they might not be the exact same word. One of the things I already noticed in the introductory paragraph, they referred to something called a Hooverville, right? So a Hooverville, they referred to it up in the first paragraph. Go highlight or circle it in the first introductory paragraph. Okay, so you noticed in the introductory paragraph, they used the word Hooverville. Then in our text here, in the text heading, there it is again, finding a home in Hooverville. And then they used it right here. So the fact that the authors used the word Hooverville, which is a very unique word, 3 different places, plus we noticed it right here in the caption, like a Hooverville is important somehow, right? Obviously, they use it 3 different times. I also noticed words like encampments. Encampments were used twice. Other words that stood out to me, homes, and lots of words that dealt with home. So homes, homeless, shelter, shanty towns. That one kind of stood out to me because I was like, what does that even mean? homes in quotation marks. I know that quotation marks can mean things that were said or taken out of context, but I also know that it can denote sarcasm. Like if someone puts something in quotes, like to point out, like, it's not really a home. Why is it not really a home? Because they're like cardboard boxes, right? That's what we went on to find out. So these homes, most people wouldn't call them homes because they're made out of cardboard boxes. I know that residents are people who live in a home. So like as I was going, I started to notice that this whole section had something to do with homes or actually the lack thereof. Anytime that I try to get my kids to understand main idea, you may have had a teacher in the past who was like, tell me what the main idea is, and then they wrote like 2 or 3 sentences about the main idea. Or maybe you felt like I have to fill up this page about the main idea. I'm going to ask you to keep the main idea to 5 words or less. 5 words or less. It should sort of model a headline in a news story. Most people don't read the newspaper anymore, but if you do, or if you watch the news, a little headline will come across. And a headline is a preview about what you're about to hear about or read about, okay? These are headlines. Notice how many words? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we keep going, you'll see even the subheadings keep it to 5 words or less. The reason headlines are 5 words or less or 6 words or less is because they want the reader to know what it's about, but they don't want to give away all the details. They want you to go read the actual article or paragraph or paper about what it's actually about. So, for example, if I were reading a newspaper and I'm just looking for stories that make me feel good about the world, would I want to read a story about bus crash kills 5? No. Even though it's four words, bus crash kills 5, that it gives me an idea. Something terrible happened. I teach kids who ride the bus all the time. The thought of a school bus crash is going to give me anxiety. I'm going to skip that news story. But if I see an article, adorable seal surprises surfers, that's a 4-word headline. Is that going to hit my buttons of like feel-good stories? Yes, adorable seal. Seals are pretty cute. Adorable is a positive word. Surprise is typically a good thing. And surfers, oh, like, how is a seal going to surprise a surfer? Well, if you watched CNN 10 last week, you know that there's a seal in the Pacific Ocean that just keeps jumping on surfboards and riding waves with the surfers, right? So headlines can give us an idea not just about what the topic is, but even about the mood of the topic sometimes, which can be very helpful if you're like me, who's like got to pick and choose what news stories you want to be involved with that day. So with these circled words or repeated words, I'm going to think about a main idea headline or a main idea statement that's 5 words or less. Now, I could keep it finding a home in Hooverville, but if you don't really know what a Hooverville is, like you haven't looked at the picture, you don't have the caption, you're like, okay, Hooverville, let's go, let's new suburb. No, this is not a place that you would probably want to shop for a new home, right? So while this is a headline for sure, it doesn't really tell the reader in advance what it's about. Let's come up with our main idea statement. So I'm going to keep it to 5 words or less, 5 words or fewer. I know we talked about homes and homeless and shanty towns and residents, and all of this is happening as a result of the Great Depression and joblessness, right? So let's see. Who am I talking about? People. And what did they do? They became homeless, right? Because of the Great Depression. So I'm going to say my main idea 1 is people lose jobs and homes. That's what this entire section is about. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 words right there. I could have chosen a different 5 words or fewer. I could have said homelessness affects millions in depression, right? I could have said Great Depression brings homelessness. Any of those would work. So when I'm asking you to come up with the main idea, I'm not asking for a specific 4 or 5 words. I want to know what you think is the main part. What is the main idea of this whole section? Because if you get stuck on consumer products, that's only one small detail. We're talking about what is the overall problem that happened as a result of the Great Depression. Lots of people lost their homes. That you pointed out were dates and numbers. So I'm going to actually highlight those just so that they stand out a little bit. So, eyes please. There were lots of numbers. Some of them were years like 1931, 1932, 1934. But then there were also numbers like 35 million and 125 million. Why do you think that the author would include those numbers? Sina?
So that the author could emphasize how much farmers like acres and equipment and crops were lost in that time span?
Yeah. It is to give an idea of like how vast, how huge this tragedy was. And was it just a one-time thing? No. 1931, and then there's a number again. It's not written out as a number, but 14. In 1932, the number had risen to 38. By 1934, now we're seeing how much land is lost. So the numbers not only tell us time, like 31, 32, 1934, to show us it wasn't a one-time occurrence. It was something that kept happening year after year. 14 times in the first year, 38 times in the second year. So what can we infer from that for the third 1934 year? It was even bigger or less? Bigger. So we can make an inference, because the numbers keep growing, that the number of storms also kept growing. So those numbers are important. Thank you. Sina?
I also noticed when it says yearbook of agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
I remember like hearing the video.
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing the video a couple months ago that it meant like that was an almanac.
That was a what? An almanac. All of a sudden I realized what you said. Yeah, an almanac, like the farmer's almanac, keeps records about the crops and agriculture from year to year, including weather. So that's a good call. Agriculture is also just another word for farming, right? So Sanaya mentioned earlier that she saw a word farm, farmers, farms down here, farms right there, like 4 or 5 times. There's another one right here. So did the Dust Bowl only happen to farms? No. Why would it be more likely to happen in a rural area as opposed to a city? The cities were affected, but not in the same way. Why would the Dust Bowl, dust storms affect farms more? Imani? Because they have more dirt, right? They don't have buildings. If you look out here, like there are actually very few places where there's not either grass, sidewalks, concrete, or a building, right? There are very few places where the dust could get picked up by the wind. Now, when the farmers started to overwork their land and the crops started to die, it worsened the problem because now there's nothing with roots holding the soil in. So every time a big wind would come, it would pick up all of that dirt and blow it around, okay? There was one other word that I personally noticed, and there were words like abandoned. They mentioned abandoned here. They also mentioned it up here. And then I think it was Sina, and I heard one other person, I can't remember who, said that they used the word lost, okay, or destroyed. All of those sort of mean the same thing. That's a good case of abandoned was repeated twice, and lost was repeated twice, but they mean the same thing. So we kind of have to count them 4 or 5 times. So if I were going to come up with a main idea statement, 5 words or less, that tells us what this paragraph is mainly about, what would it be? I'm going to give you 1 minute to talk with your team about what would your main idea statement be. Okay, after some discussion, I'm going to say that main idea, I'm going to take a combination of two different groups. Main idea number 2. Dust storms destroy Midwest. Do we need to mention like farms and farmland specifically?
No.
Isn't that really who was mentioned most? Yeah, they mentioned farmers and farmlands, tractors, agriculture in lots of different places, lots of farming connected words. So I'm going to make sure to include that. Dust storms destroy Midwest farms or farmers, because it didn't just destroy the land, it destroyed these families too. Boom. All right. So we're going to always be on the lookout for repeated words or repeated connected words, because that's going to help us come up with our main ideas. And in tomorrow's lesson, we'll put it all together and use our main ideas to then build a short summary.